Welcome to the More Perfect Union After Dark, when you get to hear what we talk about once the podcast ends. This week we started off with some coarse humor about the president, then segued into some discussions about New York politics and how dirty they can get, and then we segued into a rather heated and interesting conversation about the Neil Gorsuch nomination. There was some sharp debate, but a lot of laughs. We think you'll enjoy it.
Okay, now that we're off, DJ, I did not think, when you referred to stuff up Putin's rear, I did not think you were going to refer to Trump's head.
Why not?
Wait, should I not be recording Audacity right now? Or keep
going.
Please keep recording. We're talking about Putin's head up Trump's ass. My God, who wouldn't want this recorded for posterity?
Posterity or posterior?
Excuse me, but Cliff, I never mentioned which of Trump's heads I was talking about now, did I?
Oh.
Well played.
When they come for you, I'm giving up all of you. So, yeah.
So I got to ask you guys, a little thing came out this week. It didn't get much publicity. Representative Peter King, a Republican from New York, was being interviewed someplace, somewhere, somehow, and he let it slip. He let it slip that historically Russians have supported Republicans. And then it came out that that was part of the secure or confidential intelligence briefing that they got about what they know about the Russian disinformation campaign. And he had to walk that back. Do you guys believe that to be true, that historically Russians have preferred Republican presidents over Democrats?
Which Russians?
I believe Peter King is
in the post-Cold War era, I would have to say yes. What was it was funny in 2004 when George W. Bush was reelected. Vladimir Putin actually held a press conference commending the American people for their great wisdom in choosing a wonderful war leader. I'm not kidding. He really held a press conference talking about how wonderful George W. Bush was. He bashed Barack Obama's economic policy before Barack Obama even knew what his economic policy was. So no, that doesn't really surprise me. Nor does it surprise me that Peter King, who frankly loves the sound of his own voice, would accidentally drop something like that, because I mean he's Peter King, for crying out loud. Yeah. The best thing that ever happened to Peter King was Steve King going all thoroughly white nationalist, because now Peter King can go, whoa, I'm not that Congressman King.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to contextualize it, I think it was Nunes who was asking questions and sort of skirting around the issue, skirting around the historical Russian support for Republicans. And I guess Peter King didn't catch up on what he was trying to do. And it just came out. And I think he didn't appreciate that it came from a classified report. My read is it's innocuous, but I don't know him. We didn't talk, so I could be wrong. He did not call me. No one returns my calls. Peter King does not return my calls. Taylor Swift does not return my calls. Nobody.
Right, I understand that. But Kevin, all you need to know about Peter King, he is a Republican from Nassau County. That should tell you everything you need to know about this bastard.
And for people that don't know what that is, what does it tell us?
It tells Nassau County. The Nassau County Republican Party is easily the most corrupt Republican Party in the United States, and it is frankly one of the most corrupt political organizations in the country as a whole. It has.
What have they been caught doing?
They've been caught. They actually drove the county into bankruptcy, I think, at one point. A few years ago.
I think there was a pay-to-play scandal out there on Long Island.
There was a pay-to-play scandal.
Let's face it, New York politics are corrupt.
Well, yes, New York State has a bipartisan history of corruption. But my point
Albany is probably the most corrupt state capital, and I am from New York State, so I say this with great affection.
You meant that in the nicest possible way.
I meant it in the nicest way, but my God, the groping interns is de rigueur in Albany.
But the other thing I would say in the post-Cold War context is that it was Clinton who was pushing for NATO expansion, if I am not mistaken, in the 1990s.
Sure was. Mm-hmm.
And the Russians have, rightfully or wrongfully, perceived that as a mixture of a threat of sorts and a historical slight. Now, never mind the fact that there was also that period of chatter in about 2000 when I think it was Yeltsin was making noises about trying to join NATO. But, that context does bear mentioning here.
Yeah, and again, getting back to Nassau County, because it's a burr up my ass with me because I don't like those people. Nassau County was the home of Dean. Nassau County was the home of Dean Skelos, who was the state Senate Majority Leader in New York, who was one of the victims of Preet Bharara's anti-corruption probe, and he was essentially found steering business contracts or various other funding stuff to businesses who would hire his son.
And he's also from my hometown of Rockville Center, Long Island.
Yeah. So when I say Peter King is a Nassau County Republican and that's everything you need to know, essentially what I'm doing is I am saying that the man has practically no integrity whatsoever.
Is the corruption stem from like all the Wall Street money or just? I mean,
oh no. If it stemmed from Wall Street, these people would not be so stupid as to keep falling into the nets of the U.S. attorneys for the various districts of New York. No, Wall Street is far better at avoiding jail time and prosecution than these clowns are.
Yeah, they have better lawyers. Nunes has proven himself to be the president's lapdog this week. He's not exactly engendered a whole lot of confidence. The way he...
That's an offense to lapdogs everywhere, Rebecca.
I mean, he went running to the president with, what did he even find out? That, Susie likes him? She passed him a note in math class, and so he goes running to the White House to tell them without first briefing Adam Schiff. What he found was that... What he essentially found, from what I can tell, was that some Trump people were were involved in conversations that run an investigation. We don't know whether the Trump people themselves are being investigated or whether the Russians on the other side of the conversation are being investigated. I think the latter is more likely. Agreed.
But the fact that he felt need to tell the president before he told Democrats on his own committee, it just looks bad, and it looks bad for a reason, because it is bad.
Yeah.
Can I float a theory? Can I float a Kevin conspiracy theory?
Yes.
Sure, that's what After Dark is
Please,
for.
go ahead.
Okay, it's not a conspiracy, but it's a theory, and I have no evidence for this. It's just a hunch. When you think, okay, aside from the fact that we all think Nunes was probably trying to help Trump because he ran with Trump or he helped Trump get elected, he's a Republican, he's loyal, why else would they go to Trump with information and not share it with the committee, not share it with the public? Why would he go to Ryan, and why would Ryan say, yes, you better take this to the president first? Here's my theory. I think whoever was mentioned or caught in this secondary, what do they call this?
Incidental.
This kind of information? This incidental conversations. I think it was either Ivanka or one of the other kids.
Oh, that's a thought.
I think that they were trying to protect his family. I think that's why he went to him.
But don't you think that would have been leaked by now?
I don't know.
I'm inclined, at least personally, to suspect that it was the more baseline explanation of Trump had said X, Y was being said, Z is closer to X, so inform him of Z, as it were.
I don't know what that means, but I was never good at algebra, so...
It's like a logic problem. If A, then B.
I was good at algebra and I couldn't follow.
But basically, Trump had said Trump had made the whole thing of he was wiretapped, blah blah blah. So that was out there. You had these guys, you had Comey et al. Saying, "Well, no, there was no wiretapping of the campaign. There was no wiretapping of this." And then there's information.
I see.
Yeah.
What Cliff is trying to say is Trump claimed he was tapped. They found evidence that the Russians, some Trump people were talking to, were tapped. And so Nunes thought, oh, wait, I should tell the president this so that he can get his own story straight. That would explain why Ryan agreed with telling the president and why the Democrats have not felt the need to leak, and why the folks who you would normally think might leak whatever it is aren't actually leaking anything new on it, because it was stuff we already knew, but it was a matter of Nunes trying to help the president get his own story straight.
Or it might have been a case of Ryan saying, "Oh my God, Devin, leave me alone. Don't you see I have a mess on my hands? Do what you want to do."
No, I don't think Ryan is that laissez-faire.
Any thoughts on the Gorsuch nomination?
Yes, all the thoughts. I think the smart thing for the Democrats to do here is leave it alone. Don't push them to the nuclear option. I'm George Bushing it. Nuclear option. I don't know. I think the Democrats have the wrong read on Gorsuch in two ways. One, they are opposed to his originalist view of the Constitution, which is something that they're going to have an issue with for any conservative judge. But the second is they need to look at who he is on a personal level and look at his history. He's got a history of very deep friendships with people in the LGBT community. His resume is impeccable. And I think it would be a mistake. I think it would be a big mistake for the Democrats to, try and win the battle and lose the war on this one.
Don't forget that. Can we look at who he isn't? The problem with Neil Gorsuch is that he isn't Merrick Garland, who was nominated by a sitting president within all of his rights as a sitting president to fill an empty Supreme Court seat when a Supreme Court justice died within 12 months of the election. And we are angry, very, very angry at Mitch McConnell, who was wrong. And you cannot defend what he did.
And that Helena is why the Democrats. That's why the Democrats are not going to really they're not going to get hurt politically from doing this. They're going to push it.
Normally, yes, elections have consequences.
Whether they're hurt or not, they're not going to win.
No, we're not going to win.
They're not going to
win.
They're
You know what?
not
We are
gonna
going
win.
to make you feel it.
Mitch McConnell will push the nuclear button, if you forgive the term. And Gorsuch will get confirmed with 52 votes. But the Democrats will do two things as a result. One, they will make filibustering their nominees impossible in future elections, and they're not dumb. They see that coming over the horizon, and they want that now. Two, they will make Rebecca feel better about them as a party because they are essentially fighting tooth and nail to stop the filling of a seat that they felt was within their rights to fill.
We didn't just feel it. We were within our rights. There is no question that we were within our rights, that Obama was within his rights. Mitch McConnell was wrong. He was being a dick.
But he had every right to be a dick, Rebecca.
Right. So that's
the simple fact of the matter is it is not the first time that a Democratic incumbent has nominated a justice in an election year only to find that justice would not get through Senate confirmation for whatever reason. I mean, Lyndon Johnson had the same problem with a Republican minority who said, we're filibustering whoever you are nominating. And granted, him being Lyndon Johnson, he decided to nominate somebody who was rather corrupt anyway. But that's because he was Lyndon Johnson. But the fact of the matter is...
You couldn't help that.
I understand why Democrats are upset. I get that. But the simple fact of the fact of the matter is, looking forward now, Gorsuch is going to get confirmed. But the Democrats will lose absolutely nothing politically by fighting him tooth and nail because their base wants him to fight him tooth and nail with very good reason. Republicans, even Republican base voters, expect the Democrats to fight him tooth and nail. And most Americans who are in the center will not pay attention to this because this will be 3 years gone by the time the next presidential election rolls around in 2020. The fact of the matter is, it's very simple. The only reason Donald Trump is president of the United States is because Antonin Scalia died. If he were alive... If Antonin Scalia were alive today, Hillary Clinton would be president of the United States. Democrats win when the Supreme Court is not an issue because it means Republicans aren't so jacked up to vote that they'll elect any moron, including the guy who sits in the White House today.
So that may be true. I don't know that I think Trump is president only because Scalia died. You've got a number of justices that are into their 80s now that are an issue for conservatives. But, the other thing, when you talk about other presidents who have faced the same issue, we all know that the Biden story, right? I don't know there was an actual nomination, but Biden encouraged.
There was not, but Joe Biden in 1992 flatly said he told George Bush the elder, "Don't bother nominating anybody if there's a vacancy. We're not going to confirm them until the election is over and we figure out and we figure out what happens."
So to answer Rebecca's concern, I understand being angry, and I get that, right? But I'm going to try and make sure this doesn't come across in an insensitive way, because it's the opposite of who I think I am. One, that's not where we are right now, right? Merrick Garland is not up at that. So we have to move on from that. And two, being angry about it doesn't mean it is procedurally incorrect or procedurally invalid. So I completely understand the way in which one might feel gypped, for lack of a better word, and gypped maybe is not a strong enough word given the rights that different people think are at stake. But Gorsuch is a good pick. He's a really good pick. And I think that sometimes Democrats object to these types of picks based on principles that are really unmoored from anything except their own arbitrarily designed system of mores and rules.
But they're not the only one. They're not the only ones, Helena. Republicans do that.
Yeah.
Well,
let's be fair here.
But I think Democrats.
Both
Democrats
congressional parties get unmoored from reality on occasion, and on more than one occasion.
Yeah, reality and politics aren't actually good bedfellows.
Yeah, the other thing that I have to say there is, it was really interesting watching as Harry Reid was talking about going nuclear, blah, 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 and then you have Chuck Schumer, who had every chance to say this is a bad idea before the election, waited until after the election when his party got a pie in the face to say, oops, that was a stupid idea. So it's not like, it's not like y'all haven't been seriously looking at the nuclear option, and to be fair, there was the bandying about back in, under W of doing this then.
And Democrats love the filibuster when George W. Bush was in office, but they don't want it anymore. So this is their way of getting rid of it.
Let me throw out an alternative theory, since I seem to be the contrarian today. I think
today?
the Democrats... Yeah, right. I seem to be the contrarian in my life. I think the Democrats are going to filibuster it.
I think they will.
Chuck Schumer said they will.
I'm with you there.
I'm not 100. Well, somebody here seemed to think that they should just go along with it because otherwise the nuclear option will be explode and they'll lose anyways. First of all,
I said that would happen with Gorsuch, and I think that will happen with Gorsuch. But I don't think that means the Democrats are going to lose politically from that. I think getting rid of the filibuster is probably what they think they want now. Number one, and number two, I do not think they lose anything from filibustering Gorsuch in either short-term, mid-term, or long-term politics. No. If they want to do it, then they should go ahead and do it. I don't think they're going to lose anything from it, Kevin.
Maybe one or two here or there, depending on the district. But
well, let me finish my thought.
Go ahead.
I'm not convinced that McConnell is going to actually go the nuclear option. There's a lot of posturing in politics. You will remember as recently as Friday morning, Trump was saying, we're going to vote. We're going to vote on this. You have to vote yes or no on the health care bill.
Fair enough.
And then they pulled it. Okay.
Fair enough.
There's a lot of senators in the Republican caucus that respect the filibuster, the history of the Senate, and they know what goes around comes around. They're very aware that Donald Trump may lose election in 2020, and they may be looking at a President Sanders, a President Booker, a President Warren. You put your name in there, whoever you want it to be. And they don't want that person to be able to fill 2 or 3 or 4 Supreme Court seats with a 51 vote majority. Okay?
So, Kevin, I have an alternative idea.
Hold on. I'm not done yet.
Let Kevin finish his thought.
I'm going to finish this thought whether you guys like it or not. One, I'm not convinced that McConnell will actually have the support in his caucus to go to the nuclear option. But let's say he does. The Democrats are no worse off than if they helped Gorsuch get confirmed in the first place. Because either way, Gorsuch gets on the Supreme Court. But if they do not force McConnell's hand this time, he will hold that sword of Damocles over them for the rest of this term, this presidential term. If I were the Democrats, I would say, shoot the gun, pull the trigger. Let's get this out of the way now. At least in the future, we know what we're dealing with when we deal with future Supreme Court nominees. And also, by the way, our base, the left political base, is dead set against Gorsuch. I don't care, Helena, how great a jurist you think he is.
Fantastic.
The Democrats think he's poison. The base is ready to fight. I think the die has been cast that for the rest of this term, this presidential term, whether we think it's good for the country or not, it is going to be, the Democrats are going to be a 100% opposition party. They are not going to hand Donald Trump a single victory.
Help me understand. Walk me through why the Democrats feel the way they do about Gorsuch. I understand there are some tea leaves, that they read about how he might rule on certain issues. I know there's a Hobby Lobby issue, things like that. But walk me through why he's poison in a way that is distinct from any other type of conservative jurist that would be put up for the bench.
He's not. To the Democrats,
it's a Merrick Garland problem.
To the Democrats, just about any Republican nominee at this point is poison. And just like, frankly, to Republicans now, just about any Democratic nominee is practically poison. So, and I think Kevin is right. And I thought I said this before. The Democrats lose nothing politically by throwing everything, including the kitchen sink at Gorsuch, and forcing McConnell to try to get rid of the filibuster. But I think as far as Democrats are concerned, one, it's the fact of this particular seat, because this particular seat was left open by McConnell as a political tactic. Two, because that political tactic actually worked and actually succeeded. I think that has the Democrats enraged, and I can understand where liberal Democrats are coming from. And they will simply not allow any sort of cooperation on this seat. They won't allow any cooperation on any Supreme Court seat because Democrats genuinely. Here's the thing, Helena. Democrats genuinely see the Supreme Court as America's third legislative chamber, and Republicans don't. And Democrats know Republicans don't. So as far as most Democrats are concerned, any Republican nominee, no matter who it is, will be somebody who refuses to see the Supreme Court as America's third legislative chamber, and that means every Democrat, especially the liberal Democrats, feel they must oppose them, and they want their elected officials to oppose them.
I understand that the Democrats are not going to lose anything from throwing everything in the kitchen sink at Gorsuch. I think there's a different question as to whether that's the right thing to do, whether they should. And I don't buy it that simply because Democrats prefer activist judges and Gorsuch and Thomas and justices on the right are not activist judges, that's enough justification to take that approach. If you look at Lindsey Graham, I'm pretty sure he voted yes on both Elena Kagan and Sotomayor. So, and he's not someone who's a proponent of activist judges. So I think at some level, there has to be some responsibility on the part of Congress members to look at a candidate and say, is this a principled jurist with whom I may disagree on a variety of issues, right? But I trust that their north, right, is what the Constitution says, the values and the freedoms that we hold dear, and what's best for the country.
And that should have been true 14 months ago when Antonin Scalia died.
I get that we're upset. I get we're upset about Merrick Garland. We've got to move on. Merrick Garland is not at bat.
Okay. First of all, I think neither side actually trusts the other side to actually have what they would consider to be a true north. I think that's the bigger problem. And what we've been watching over the last, I would say decade or so, is a game of strip-iterated prisoner's dilemma with procedural safeguards in Congress, where the filibuster has been eroded because both sides take turns abusing it. Now, what I would do if I was McConnell here is I would not trigger the nuclear option. I would let this stuff stack up until next summer, until summer 2018, and then I would announce that we are going into session on July 1st, and until this stuff is discharged, Democrats, congratulations, you have to maintain a filibuster through Election Day. By the way, half of your caucus is up for re-election, so you're going to have to keep those guys off the campaign trail while we do this, and while we continually draw a line under the fact that you're blocking this, that, and the other. And that would be the gambit I would play.
I think that's wise, Cliff. And I think, the Gavin Grimm, the transgender bathroom case that came out of Virginia, was supposed to go up to the court in March, and now it's not. So the Republicans have bought themselves some time. They wanted Gorsuch on the bench, on the court for that case. Now it's not happening. So they've got a couple months where they could push it till summer.
And by the way, I'm trying to look at the roll call votes. And you're right about Graham on the Sotomayor vote. But John
What about
McCain,
Kagan?
But I'm trying to find Kagan. I can't find it. But John McCain voted against Sotomayor, for what it's worth.
Well, normatively, this is how I would like to see Congress members behave.
Yes. I mean, we would all like to see all Congress members behave ethically and have some kind of moral backbone. But, I just have to... Rebecca tried to explain this, and I have to agree with her. You guys do not understand how personal the Merrick Garland situation is to us. It's as big a deal to us as Obamacare was to the right for the last 7 years. And when you say, oh, that's past, just get over it, the left is never, ever going to get over it.
So help me understand, is this about the way at which it was disrespectful to Obama as a president? Is this about a Merrick,
stolen
the candidate?
Supreme Court
It's a stolen
seat.
seat. This Supreme Court seat.
It's about the it's about the 30
it has
years.
Nothing to do with
it's
Barack
about the 30
Obama.
years that he could have. Okay, so it's about the 30 years of jurisprudence that would have come down with another Anthony Kennedy, but further left.
First of all, with Merrick Garland, it would have been 15 years. Okay, the man's already in his 60s.
Young. Garland is young. Garland is
he's in his 60s.
Had they actually, and it may very well be that McConnell. I mean, part of it may. I think part of the thing that is further fueling the Democrats' anger is if Mitch McConnell thought he had 51, that he had actually 51 votes against Merrick Garland, he would have gone through the confirmation process, put it to the floor, and shot it down. But he didn't do that, even though he had 54 seats, because he probably knew that he couldn't get 51 no votes on Garland. So he just put his foot down and said no.
Garland was just as qualified as Gorsuch. I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Gorsuch, if Antonin Scalia had died on January 21st, I would not be holding this position. But the fact is, Antonin Scalia died at the beginning of 2016. And this seat was left open simply to spite Barack Obama.
No, it was left open. It was left open to elect Donald. It was left open to elect the Republican nominee for president. Barack Obama didn't quite have that much to do with it as far as Mitch McConnell was concerned. Barack Obama was an obstacle to Mitch McConnell getting his president in the White House. That's what this was.
He took a roll of the dice and he won.
Right. He took a roll of the dice and he won. But my point is, I am not going to begrudge any Democrat, any fellow Democrat now, who says, I want my senator to do everything they can to stop Gorsuch getting nominated. It is an easy political win for the Democrats in that there are really no consequences of their actions, and they get to make their voters happy.
If I understand Kevin and Rebecca correctly, what I'm hearing you say is the reason the Merrick Garland issue is so outrageous for you and creates such an emotional response is because of the fears you have about the next, let's call it 20 years that he would have
Helena,
on the court and the rulings that come down. Is that right?
Let me try to answer for them because I'm arrogant that way. Chuck Schumer actually used the filibuster to block a whole lot of George W. Bush appointees to lower levels. And I know a lot of, I was a Republican back then. I knew Republicans back then. And in particular, it was Estrada. And they were furious about it. They essentially, Estrada became the conservatives' version of the bloody shirt in arguments about how Democrats are politicizing the judiciary. The Merrick Garland situation is Estrada times a million.
Okay, I was in middle school. In my defense.
Well, we're going to call this. We're going to call this.
I'm old. Oh, just cut the whole damn thing.
No,
because it just showed how utterly old I am.
No, in your honor, we're going to call this the Estrada episode.
No, let's not. Yeah, I was in middle school, but I think that the question I would ask again, assuming I'm hearing and understanding what Kevin and Rebecca are saying correctly, what exactly is it that you think that Gorsuch will do that is so devastatingly harmful and different from the effect that Garland would have? And why do you think that?
It's not about Gorsuch's qualifications. It's not personal to Gorsuch at all. It's not even about, what I think he will do to the alignment of the court or the way he'll rule. It is the principle of it. I am so angry at what Mitch McConnell.
So how do you answer the Biden question? How do you answer the Biden problem?
No, first of all, it 1992
or something like
that? Because Biden was speaking in hypotheticals.
Hold on. So the principle is okay. The principle is okay if it's hypothetical and never actually applied, but it's not okay if it's actually applied and gone through.
Biden wasn't a leader.
But the principle that he espoused is exactly what happened. So this doesn't make any sense. It can't be that it's fine in theory. It's fine if it's a hypothetical, but if you actually
wasn't
apply
a leader.
it, then it's not acceptable.
He wasn't talking about an actual situation. Biden was spouting his mouth off. But Biden wasn't a decision maker in that moment. Biden was talking.
I disagree,
Biden
Rebecca.
Was the Peter King of his
whoa,
moment.
stop, hold it. At the time, Joe Biden was chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he could make sure that any nomination for any position, including a Supreme Court nomination, was frozen in amber.
Right. So let's
he
not
had
pretend
the power.
that this is some.
He was saying he was willing to use it.
So let's not pretend that this is some unconscionable thing.
It is an
that the
unconscionable
Republicans
thing.
did.
No, it is. It is an unconscionable thing.
That it's an unconscionable thing that happens on both sides, that both sides signed off on to some extent.
I'm gonna give you the answer. I'm gonna button this entire conversation up for you. If you want to know why politics are as toxic in the United States as they are right now, I can answer that in 2 words. Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell changed politics in the United States from the day Barack Obama was inaugurated.
Right, the one-term president. Right.
Why are the Democrats now being an opposition party? Mitch McConnell. Okay? Why is
I don't agree, but that's fine.
People talking about the nuclear option? Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell thinks that winning at any cost is the only thing that matters. There's no honor. There's no history of the Senate. There's just beat the other side to a pulp, take your victory and go home. Because as Ryan told his caucus, you don't get to legislate unless you win. All they care about now is taking the advantage that they have and making the most of it politically. And they will squeeze the McNuggets of the Democrats any place they can to get a political advantage. Mitch McConnell is one of the worst human beings in Washington, D.C. I don't care how good a grandfather he is. I don't care how good a husband he is. I don't care how nice a guy he is when he's out drinking with his buddies. He has ruined politics. What he did with the Scalia seat is unconscionable, not because Barack Obama was the first black president, not because it's going to change the makeup of the court. Scalia was a conservative. We're going to get another conservative with Garland. It's because he played dirty. He stole that seat. And believe me, if you think I'm angry, you go out and talk to some liberals on the street. They're fuming, and they want the Democrats in the Senate to knock down every conservative that Trump puts up, and they don't care what happens next.
And Kevin, the biggest issue that I see with, and I do understand the anger, but the biggest underlying issue I see here is, turning to a liberal and saying, pay him back is all well and good. Turning to your theoretical, middle of the road voter, who's hearing the Democrats just turning around saying payback is hell, that you run the risk that you're actually going to drive some of those voters to the Republicans on the choice of, do we want even more deadlock?
Not on this one. I don't think the risk. I certainly, in terms of the presidential election, I certainly don't think the risk is high for doing that in 2017 when 2020 is 3 years away. And I was initially going to actually beat the hell out of Kevin for what he said. But the more I thought about it, the more I think his point was buttressed when I saw, much to my horror, what happened when President Obama asked for trade promotion authority in 2015. And I saw down-the-line economic conservatives who I admired for standing against the bank bailout, who I admired for standing against what I still call the Patently Deficient and Unaffordably Careless Act, who I admired for standing against tax increases, suddenly declare that free trade, which was one of the most important advances for limited government in the 20th century, was suddenly renamed Obama trade, and they felt compelled to oppose it. It was the reason I chose Marco Rubio over Ted Cruz in 2015. It's the reason I never really trusted even Ted Cruz, even as I reluctantly supported him when Marco Rubio backed out, because so many Republicans looked at trade promotion authority as a political victory for the Democrats instead of an advancement for consumers and for importers across America and around the world. You know, and Mitch McConnell and John Boehner, frankly, had a lot to do with that. John Boehner, I think, is just as culpable because John Boehner seemed to think that unless you can cobble all the Republicans into supporting something, it shouldn't go through. No Republican leader ever thought that, even when they did run the House. Newt Gingrich never ran Congress that way. Joe Martin never ran Congress that way. None of the Democrats ran Congress that way. John Boehner chose to run Congress that way because it was more about holding his party together than doing what was best for the country. I'm not sure how much that was influenced by Mitch McConnell, but I think Kevin is right. The Republican Party focused far too much on beating the other guy. And there is risk that the Democrats will focus too much on beating the other guy. But I don't think the Gorsuch nomination is enough to say that they're going to risk that. I think the Democrats can go ahead and do everything they want on that. The question is going to be, if Trump ever moves to the center, can Democrats go with him? Or are they going to fall into the trap that Republicans did in Obama's first term? If Democrats fall into that trap, Trump will get reelected. If they don't, then Trump will be in trouble. But I don't think that's a question Democrats have to ask themselves right now, particularly with the Gorsuch nomination. There are plenty of things where just a standard, these are things that Republicans expect of a judiciary, these are things that Democrats expect of a judiciary. There's enough of that for Democrats to have legitimate reasons to oppose Neil Gorsuch, even if this other stuff wasn't polluting the debate.
You know who doesn't care at all about the Gorsuch nomination is the 15 4-year-olds I'm going to have to be dealing with tomorrow morning as the parent helper in preschool.
Yes, this has been a fun conversation, but
about
it's very late.
The Supreme Court.
Okay, everybody, I think we should call it a night.
They are going to run and climb and do all the things that little children do.